Welcome to Talking in Common, a podcast of all things lifestyle, family, relationships, well-being, kids and culture. This is not a how-to, but an insight into the lives of ourselves and others and how we all manage to get by. Hosted by myself, Kate Gadinsky, and my co-host, Sophie Panton. Take a listen and let's find out what we all have in common. We have a very special guest joining us today, Soph.
The special, precious, tiniest guest we've ever had.
Oh, well, I'm so stoked. We are finally doing this episode. Do I ever say that word?
We're really doing a juggle here today. I've got a child attached to my boob.
I'm on Soph's lounge room floor. I have come over to dig deep and get all of her, little wise words of wisdom from her birth story. I hope you've got some wise words of wisdom for me, my love.
I'll do my best. You're going to hear lots of little baby sounds in this episode, guys. Here he is, my sweet little man.
At only 4 weeks old, I've got her back recording the potty.
He's 5 weeks now. 5 weeks? Close to 6, actually. Oh. So, yeah, bear with us.
Let's talk about what we've got in common today then.
Oh, what do we? Got a newborn baby anywhere?
No newborn babies here. Look, I think we said last episode we're now mums of 2, so.
Sometimes that we don't always have in common, but we probably do at the moment is I've definitely been having a nightly drink every night now.
Oh,
Are you on the...
All the time.
Yeah, I thought so.
You so look forward to that little tipple at the end of the day. Oh, look, let's face it, if we get to the afternoon, we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, 3 p.m. in your house. I've been at your house at 3 p.m.
Oh, listen, I've been at your house at 2:45, I reckon. I reckon it's about time for a drink now.
Do you know what? Good point, actually. Look, it's past lunchtime. As soon as we wrap this up. Do you know what I've been drinking, though? We might not have this in common. We definitely won't have this in common. But my nightly drink at the moment is a brandy.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say like kombucha with like organic vodka or something.
I'm not pregnant anymore. There is
no with
non-alcoholic
organic
drinks.
vodka, I said.
No.
Oh, a brandy. Okay. I wouldn't have pictured you to say that, but I reckon I would get on board with having a brandy with you.
I think next time we have a drink, I will make you one to try. I actually think you'll like it.
On the rocks?
No, with dry, brandy and dry. And it's a drink that my mum used to drink when we were all kids.
Yeah.
And I was at her house recently and I haven't really been feeling like wine. Like straight after birth, I was very much the same with honey. I didn't feel like drinking for quite a few weeks. You know, you're so tired, you just feel all a bit sort of scattered and everything's, crazy for a few weeks. But she did offer me a brandy and dry and I so enjoyed it.
So sophisticated.
It sounds so sophisticated. Or is it like an old lady drink? I'm not sure. But either way, it's bloody good. And you know what Aiden's like? If you give him something new, you give him an inch and he runs a mile. He's been researching. He's got all these good brandies. He's got all the best dried gingers to try. We're doing tastings every night. Yeah, it's great.
All right, well, I think you should quickly text Aiden if he might be home by the time we finish this and he can come home with a bottle of brandy and happy days.
Yeah, we've got about 3 to try. Don't worry.
So as mentioned before, we are going to talk about your birth today. Now, I was only kidding.
Don't make me nervous.
I'm only
I feel
kidding.
like you're interviewing me.
I am. No, it'll be so chill. Don't worry. No, and I was only kidding. You don't have to share us with wise words of wisdom. It's just a very much a open chat between the two of us.
Well, everyone loves a birth story, right? Especially anyone that's been through it. As soon as I had experienced birth the first time, I loved hearing people's birth stories. So here to share anything you want to know. But, bear with me, forgive me, because like my brain is a bit scattered. When you arrived before, I was just telling Kate, like, I'm just having one of those days where I just feel exhausted, a few nights or, in my case, few weeks of not getting a proper night's sleep. But just some days I feel fine and then some days it kind of catches up on you. So I'm having a bit of a brain fog day today. So bear with me, but I'll try to remember all the details. Actually, I wrote some notes on my phone to remember like times of when things happened and what's happened because who can remember those details?
Well, okay. How about while you're getting up those notes? Look, I know you always say you can't do 2 things at once, but one thing I have noticed about you since Ren has been born is all of a sudden you can multitask. And I'm not just saying this because, again, we did speak about this in a recent episode, how there was a study that showed the more children you have, the more productive you become. But the other day, you were writing an email with one hand, you were having a conversation with me, and you were breastfeeding. I'm like, who are you? And like, we were having a proper conversation. So something's happened to you since you've given birth.
Yeah.
And I
Well, I
like
think
it.
I've become that statistic, you know. The more kids you have, the more productive, the more multitasking you can do. But you just also have no choice.
No, you got no choice.
Like, we'll get into the postpartum a little bit later in the episode, but Ren's a hungry little boy and he feeds almost every 2 hours. So that's basically my whole day taken it up with him attached to me, or
Yeah.
like I am right now, if you happen to be watching this episode, like I'm just nursing him after having a feed. There's very little time between feeds. So if you can't multitask, you ain't getting shit done.
No, nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening.
All right, so
and we've got a podcast to record.
Yeah,
We've got
so let's
shit to do.
get into it because he's going to want to be fed again in a minute. Leading into the birth then, you going into labour. Where were you? I know though, but where were you? What happened? How many weeks along were you? Let's talk about all of it.
Okay, so
Am I making you nervous, by the way? You've got your nervous rash.
I think I'm just finding it hard to juggle the one waiting for Ren to wake up and feed. I'm hot sitting in the sun. It's like bringing back all
Are
these
your boobs sore?
No, not at the moment because I just fed him. But I'll tell you when they tingle, and that's when we'll be ready. So I was 40 plus 2, so 40 weeks and 2 days. And
That's a stint, girl.
Yeah, and I was very determined this time to hopefully go into spontaneous natural labour. Last time with Honey, I was induced, and I did have a positive experience with her birth, and I don't regret any of it, but I was really hoping to just trust my body this time and trust the pregnancy and trust the baby, that everything could happen naturally. And that's what I hoped for, and that's what I really desired for this birth. And it's really interesting because once you get to the gestation period in Australia, which they say is 40 weeks, is when you're full term, is it? Or, once you go over 40 weeks, it's sort of labelled as overdue.
Yeah.
Here in Australia.
I think 38 weeks is
Is it 38 to 40?
Yeah, full term, I think.
Yeah. So it's kind of like part of our culture and education to think that once you get over 40 weeks, you're overdue, and that's when you should start to look at intervention.
Yeah.
And fairly so, because, things can start to go wrong if you leave it too long. All of these sorts of considerations are important. But I just really wanted to trust in the natural process and wanted to avoid being induced if I could. And I really had to stick to my guns, because once it got to the point where I was overdue, people start suggesting different forms of intervention, start sort of making you think, like, if you go on too long, these are your options, or this is what you should start to think about. And it can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's really hard I found it quite hard to navigate and trust myself, because you have this, I just felt the weight of this sole responsibility of the child because it's in my body.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be naive and make the wrong decision. But I just really wanted to trust in the natural process. And so I think at my last appointment with my midwife, she was suggesting things like doing a stretch and sweep, and that's like, let's call it like the lesser of evils of early intervention. But I just really didn't want to do any of it. I just really wanted to keep going for a few days and just wanted to sort of take it day by day. And she actually said to me afterwards, like, you should be really proud of yourself for trusting your gut, for going with what you really hoped for. because it worked. I did go into spontaneous
Yay!
labour.
You manifested what you wanted.
I actually did,
Yeah.
like I met this really beautiful doula a few weeks beforehand, and she said to me, like, start to picture what time of day you want to give birth.
Was that the time you wanted to give birth?
In the middle of the night? No,
You didn't
but I
give
did.
birth. Oh, hang on.
Well, I did picture it to be during the day.
Yeah.
Whereas Honey was born in the middle of the night, and I did picture it to be during the day, and he was born at lunchtime.
Yay.
Actually, so yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, funnily it was. But yeah, she started to say things like that. Visualize the type of birth that you want to have, and think about all of that sort of stuff. And I think I mentioned I started meditating a few weeks before giving birth.
Are you still going with that, by the way? I haven't asked you.
I haven't been able to pick it up since giving birth to Ren. It's something that Aiden and I were just talking about last night that we really need to get back into. And I've been texting with the meditation
This is
teacher
what
who taught
happens,
us.
right? You'll get back into it. You're just having a little break.
Yeah.
And you'll get back into it.
I hope so. I really want to, because we were finding it really beneficial. And the intention of learning before having the baby was to continue that practice throughout the newborn stage. But I just forgot how completely consuming the newborn phase was, and we haven't been able to pick it up yet.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, but I definitely do hope to. But, all of these little things that I started to implement before giving birth really did set me up in the right sort of mind frame and right headspace to have the birth that I want.
You did the work. You put it in there.
And you have to do the work. Like, you have to do the research. You have to know what your options are, you have to empower yourself in that space if that's what you want. It's like if you go to the doctor about a sickness or an illness and completely trust what they say without doing your own research or something, like, they could make a mistake, they could be wrong.
Of course.
Like, you should never trust someone else completely with your health or your desires or your choices.
Yeah.
So, and, when I was pregnant with Honey, I had done a lot of research. I did feel like I was empowered, and that sort of came with me through this pregnancy and this birth as well. And yeah, it did give me the birth that I wanted in the end. But where was I and what happened?
Okay, I'm going to take
Sorry,
you. I'm
going to
get you on track for a sec. So, can you please share with everybody where you were when you started having contractions, when you knew, all right, this is it, the labour's happening? Give everyone a bit of the backstory, because
it's quite funny.
And then what you can not only after going into labour, then how the rest of the night panned out.
So it was about 10 or 11 p.m. at night. Aiden had just gone to bed. My partner had just gone to bed, and I was about to go to bed and follow him. But the baby was super wriggly inside my belly, moving so much to the point that it was almost hurting and uncomfortable and very unusual, and it would not stop. So I sort of put down my block of chocolate for a minute, sat up straight on the couch, tried to figure out like what was going on, tried to move to make myself more comfortable. And it just did not stop moving. It was going crazy. Like, I was physically looking down at my belly, and there was arms and legs going everywhere. So this is strange. So I went and woke up Aiden and said, I just need you to feel this and have a look at this, because it's making me feel really uncomfortable and I don't know what's going on. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, wow, that's really unusual. So anyway, we got up and like had a cup of tea together, and that's when it sort of dawned on me that something was happening and that I was going into labour, because, by that stage it was obvious. And let me just add that this was off the back of having the most horrendous day with Honey vomiting all day with gastro.
And she was still vomiting, right? She was still
sick, the poor thing, yeah.
I remember speaking to you that day, and you were like, Honey's really sick, and I think I came to drop some stuff off to you or something, and you said to me on the phone, oh, God, I just hope today's not the day I go into labour, like, just because like Honey's really unwell and there's like towels everywhere and she's throwing up every time, she eats or drinks anything. And I'm like, yeah, I really, hopefully it's not today. And I'm thinking, you're
you are
40
plus
weeks, and then ta-da. When it
Yeah.
rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, it's just what the universe had in store for me. But yeah, so poor little Honey was vomiting every half an hour all day that day. Aiden was at work that day, so it was just me and her. I honestly was like, it can't be today. Like, it's just would just be cruel if it was today. So anyway, it was that night that I got these unusual feelings. So yeah, Aiden and I got up and had a cup of tea. By this stage, it was maybe almost midnight. I had a bit of a little mini meltdown because for exactly that reason, that I just was not in the mental space to be going into labor after having a day with Honey so sick. I just started freaking out. I was like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. I didn't think it was going to be today. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the right time. Had a little freak out, had a cry. Aiden calmed me down. And then once I sort of calmed down,
I love this next
I
bit.
said to him, okay, so if I'm in labor and that's what's happening, I have a bit of a request. It might seem crazy, but can we clean the house? And can you please scrub the stove?
I love it. Oh, and like that does not seem crazy to me at all because we're both a little OCD and like things very clean.
Well, do you know what's funny?
And you didn't want to come home to a mess.
Who would?
Oh.
Every woman, particularly every mother that I have said this to you, their response has been, that's not crazy. That's not crazy at all. We totally get
just
it.
Clean the stove, please.
Clean the fucking stove. I cannot bring my fresh little baby and my my birthing body
vulnerable
home.
self home.
Yeah,
to
my
this
vulnerable
shit.
self, exactly, home to this mess. So we literally cleaned the house top to bottom. Like Aiden had the vacuum out, scrubbing the stove. I was folding all the washing, making the bed, changing the sheets, like making the house like spick and span spotless. And I think I had like said to you, a few weeks leading up to this, like the thing that I'm really fixated on is just coming home to a clean house. It is just that nesting instinct. I think you just can't help it. It's just part of the process. So we cleaned the house top to tail for about 2 hours or something. And then by this stage I was having really mild contractions, not too painful and very manageable, but I definitely knew that that's what was happening by this stage. And then just as we had decided that the house was clean enough and that my contractions were mild enough, I said to Aiden, I think I should go to bed because I need to get some sleep. Just as we hopped into bed to relax and go to sleep, we hear Honey yelling out to us, Mummy, Daddy, I've been sick. She was talking to herself in the cot. Oh, Honey, Hun Buns, why you been sick? Why are you so sick? And we were like, oh no. Poor thing, she was sort of crying, and we went in there and there was vomit all over the cot, all over her face, all over the sheets, all over her teddy bears. So then we were up for like another hour.
That's full on, even like just on a normal day or a normal night, not like when
in
you're
labor.
in labor.
Yeah, that was pretty full on. So then, yeah, that was that. Then we finally got into bed at about 3 a.m., fell asleep, and then I woke up at, according to my little notes that I wrote down here, 4:27 a.m. I woke up with quite a tight, strong contraction. And so then I felt like I was really in it from there on in. The contractions were every sort of 8 to 10 minutes from there for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And the morning, like this was a really beautiful time. Like by this stage, Aiden and I were very calm about it. Like he was very supportive and calm. We just lit some candles in the house, put on some lamps, put on some really nice calming meditation music, diffused some oils, just like made it a really nice, relaxed space in our home. And we just talked and cuddled and rode through the contractions until they got a little bit more intense. Then we called my mum. She came over to be here in case we needed to go to the hospital, so she could be here with Honey. And that was actually also really beautiful. She was with me for the birth of Honey, and I sort of hoped that she could be here for the birth of this baby as well. But because Honey was so sick, I just felt like it was the best option to have her at home with Honey, so I could feel completely, confident and happy with the fact that Honey was totally taken care of, because you can't sort of be distracted by anything else when you're in labour. You just really need to, or you don't really get a choice. So once Mum came over, it was really really nice to have her be a part of it and have her feminine energy with me for a couple of hours as well. And I was saying afterwards, like, it would have been so funny to have like a time-lapse camera in our living room, because I had like cushions on the floor. I was bent over doing one contraction, then I was up leaning against the window.
So positions, what did you kind of find helped you along, like during the process of I mean, those earlier contractions, I suppose you can still move around a little bit more, but
yeah, when they're mild and like quite manageable, it's okay. But when they start to get really intense, there's really nothing that makes you feel comfortable. But I think in one of the last episodes, I was talking about having this really nice induction massage. And the lady that I had the massage with gave me some really good labour techniques. And
pressure points or?
Yeah, pressure points. But we didn't end up using them. But this ancient I think she said it's an ancient Mexican technique with the big scarf. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's on the Spinning Babies website as well. I'll remember what is, and we can put some links in our show notes, because it actually really helped. But it's like this really big, thick scarf, and you can go in different positions where you wrap it around your belly, and your support person, in my case it was Aiden, or my mum at this stage as well, could hold it up and sort of make your belly quite weightless and do things like shake it gently and just sort of take the weight out. So we tried a few of those moves where I was like down on all fours, and this was supporting my belly, and it felt so good. It was amazing, because your body just feels so heavy and uncomfortable. I was just saying to you before we were recording this, like the feeling of once the baby had dropped down into my pelvis, sort of ready into its birthing position, it was so heavy and uncomfortable.
Was that
crazy.
Before you went to the hospital?
Yeah, it was
that
like
happen at home?
It actually I think that's what that uncomfortable movement was the night before.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because it actually sort of happened then. And I was like, my stomach feels weird, but I'm just going to pretend that it doesn't, because I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay, so your mum's here, it's early morning. I'm assuming the sun's coming up, sun's come up. At what point did you go, right, I need to go to the hospital? Because I know you wanted to be at home for as long as possible.
Yeah. Basically when I got to sort of like the shivering, jaw-shattering pain stage.
You're like, I'm literally going to pop this baby out on the floor in like a matter of minutes.
Yeah. No, I didn't feel any of that bearing down feeling yet. The contractions were just getting closer in time and much more intense. And I suppose, it was a beautiful morning where the sun was rising. It was kind of interesting. Like every time I had a contraction, I closed my eyes. I had my eyes closed a lot of the time. And then I'd open my eyes and it was lighter than it was before. So it was, it was a really beautiful part of the labouring experience. And I did want to be at home as much as I could. And I was, but I suppose the point that I chose to go to hospital was when I wasn't appreciating the beauty in it anymore. I was just in a lot of pain, and it sort of takes any practical thoughts away from you, and you're just sort of in a bit of a zone where you can't really communicate that much. And that was the point where I was like, I think I need to go into the hospital now, because I don't think I'll be able to communicate much more how comfortable I am or what's going on. And I mean, everything just felt so right. The timing felt really good. Like Aiden sort of went and put the heater on in the car and put a cushion in the car for me. And it was a really beautiful, clear, sunny morning. And being so early in the morning and it was on a Sunday as well, there was no traffic on the roads. So the drive to the hospital was really smooth. Aiden just sort of kept trying to help keep me in my zone. He put the same music on in the car. We just sort of held hands. I think I cried a lot of the time.
I actually spoke to your mum on the phone. She rang me
when
you left for the hospital, and I was saying, how is she? I said, how is she going? And she was saying that you were good, but you'd had a lot of teary moments, and that it was time to go to the hospital. And then as you were walking out the door, you were still like, oh, maybe I don't need to go yet. No, oh God. And like, pretty much that's what I got from it.
Yeah, see, there you go. I can't even really remember that.
So you're on your way to hospital. You get to the hospital. What happens?
So this time around, I was at a public hospital. So this part of it was a bit of a different experience as well, because I just had a midwife, and a few people have said as well, like that would be another great podcast episode as well, because the first time I had a obstetrician and went through the private system, and like again had a great experience, but just felt different about it this time around and felt like I didn't need a private obstetrician, so I went through the public system. I got into the program at the Royal Women's Hospital in Melbourne, where you have a one-on-one midwife.
Yeah.
Had a great midwife. She was super supportive, got along with her really well. And yeah, again, like everything just aligned. Like she was on duty that day, so Aidan was on the phone to her a few times throughout the contractions and throughout the early labour, updating her, and she was just saying to Aidan, just tell Sophie that I'll be there, there's nothing to worry about, everything sounds like it's progressing really well, just reassure her. And that gave me a lot of reassurance and confidence about going into the hospital too, because I was nervous about getting out of that really comfortable, safe zone that I was in at home into the very sterile hospital environment.
And also you hadn't had a lot of opportunities. Obviously you'd gone there for appointments and stuff, but you couldn't really do like a proper tour as such of the birthing suites, I think you were saying, because of COVID and restrictions. And
yeah,
so
exactly.
you weren't that familiar with the space.
No, I'd never seen the birthing suites or anything. They were like, oh, you can do tours online. I'm like, who does that? And how does that help?
Oh,
like,
and there's the toilet, and there's a bed, and there's a window.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was there. So this is all playing out nicely.
So when I arrived, you go to the emergency area. Hang on, bear with me one moment.
He wants to go back into your arms.
I know, he's such a little cuddler. We're
Little
talking
snuggle
all
bunny.
about you, my darling. We're talking about when you came to the world. Yeah, she was. So she was there.
Insert cute baby sounds.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right.
His little ears are burning.
Yeah, so I arrived at the hospital. You have to go through the emergency entrance and sort of wait for your midwife to come down and get you. So that part of it was a bit of an awkward transition, I suppose, of sitting in the emergency.
Bright light, like bright
really
sterile
bright
lights.
I felt like I'd been out clubbing all night and hadn't slept. Because
You'd be pretty familiar with that feeling, babe.
Back
in the day.
I'll tell you what, it's been a while.
Let's be honest, it's probably going to be a while.
Yeah. Perhaps never again. Oh, that's a sad thought. No. So what did I do? I just put my hood on. I had a jumper with a hood. I put my hood on. I closed my eyes. I think I had maybe two or three contractions while I was waiting for the midwife to come down. She came down, took me up to the birthing suite, and she had it set up so nicely.
Insert baby feeding sounds.
Yeah. She had a beautiful warm bath run. She had all the little dim lamps on. She was sort of all prepared for us, and she just kept reminding me of the same things, like stay in your zone, like do whatever you need to do, get yourself comfortable. By this stage, it was about 9 a.m. that I arrived at the hospital. And
had you planned on having a water birth?
I wouldn't say that I had like my heart set on it. It wasn't a big part of my plan, but it was something that my midwife had suggested to me a few months earlier at one of my appointments, that was an option at the hospital. And it was something that I always wanted to give a go if it was an option. So I was pleasantly surprised that was going to be an option, and that it worked out, that the room with the bath was available and that my midwife was there, and, everything sort of fell into place really nicely. I didn't have my heart set on it. Oh, excuse you, Red.
Are you sure that was the baby?
But honestly, like once I got into the room, and even though she had the bath run and, it sounds all lovely, the contractions were so intense at this stage. The thought of like stripping my clothes off and getting in water was almost a bit too much.
Too hard.
Yeah, I was like, I just don't think I want to. And both my midwife and Aidan both just sort of like gently encouraged me, like, I think you should give it a go. It might be good. And so I did. And then once I got into the water, I just was like, oh, this feels so good. Like it was warm, it was all dim and calm in there.
Took some pressure off. Yeah.
It took so much pressure off.
Yeah.
Suddenly I felt weightless, which anyone who's been pregnant before will know how relieving that feeling is. So, yeah, then once I got into the bath, I just didn't get out, couldn't get out. Every time I actually lifted my body out of the water, I felt like my body was concrete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it felt so good to be supported by the water,
Yeah.
to feel weightless.
So how long were you in the bath for then in total? Like a couple of hours or?
Yeah, I think I probably got in at about 9:30 and he was born at 12. So, yeah, a couple of hours.
When Ren was born, what position were you in the bath? How did he come flying out? I should say flying out. How did you push him out?
He actually kind of did, like not come flying out, but he came out in one, very big, strong contraction, which I didn't think he was coming yet. So he kind of did come flying out. I think I was on all fours.
Yeah.
Like I was on my knees, hands and knees.
Yeah.
In the position that I actually gave birth to him. But again, the midwife was really encouraging of trying different positions. At one stage, she had suggested to sort of squat down like on my feet, holding up onto some bars above the bath.
Yeah.
And that just really helped to change the position of my pelvis.
Yeah.
And that helped immensely because the contractions were just sort of going on. And once I got to that bearing down stage, man, that feeling is so relieving to me. I like that feeling compared to the contractions.
Okay.
Well, it just feels productive. Like finally,
true.
You're
actually getting somewhere. You're a little bit closer.
Whereas the contractions that just go on and on and on, and by that stage when they're so painful, it's just like I just can't do this anymore.
So then Ren comes slipping out.
Slipping out like a little tadpole, I say, in the pond. Yeah, I think I was in that bearing down pushing stage maybe for like half an hour. But I would get to the pushing bearing down stage and I'd feel him coming out. And then as the contraction would stop, can you hear him doing those little farts?
Yes, I can.
You really want to be a part of this, don't you,
my
man?
foot's just fallen asleep too.
Comfy on the floor here. I would go through one contraction where I could feel the push, like I would push him, and then the next one he would like suck back up again.
Ooh.
And I was like, no, oh my God, no. So that's why I say it was a little bit unexpected when he finally did come out in one of the contractions, because by this stage I just thought it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
I couldn't get him out. I was just beside myself. Like definitely got to that point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, in one foul push.
Of course you can do it.
Yeah.
You did it.
Oh, but far out. Oh my God.
I know. It's an overwhelming thought even to think back to, right?
Yeah, very. Yep.
Just think, I can't believe I did that.
I can't believe I did that.
One thing you mentioned to me, which you haven't mentioned yet, was when he came out, it was almost like he was still in his sack a little bit.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Yeah.
So he was.
That's cool. That's
crazy. It only just broke as his head came out. And the midwife was saying that she saw his head coming out still in the sack, which it does happen. Like some babies are born fully still in their sack. But his broke just as he broke through. Yeah, so my waters never broke. I feel like if they had broken a little bit earlier in the bath, I wouldn't have really known anyway.
Yeah, you probably didn't know if they had. You probably weren't, to be honest. You probably weren't even thinking about it.
No, by this stage, definitely not. But yeah, throughout the whole labour period, my waters never broke, and he was kind of almost still born in the sack, which was cool.
Oh,
rare, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And then I that feeling of when he was born in the water was so amazing. Like I remember just sort of, like I've said to a few people, like I sort of remember it like he was a little bit of a tadpole that I caught in a pond. Because I sort of looked down and I was like, where is he? Where is he? And then, I was kind of like, there he is. And just like caught him and sort of almost like fished him and pulled him up. And that feeling of when you...
feeling of
when they finally come out.
relief.
Oh, it's just the most incredible, relieving, euphoric feeling. Oh, it's the best. It's absolutely
And
the
just
best.
looking at this baby that's been inside you for months and months. It's like, you're here.
Oh, and just, yeah, after enduring that sort of intense physical strain on your body is just so relieving and amazing once they come out. Wow.
So
Best feeling in the world.
how has your recovery, like how was your recovery post-birth? Did you?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that was we had a bit of a rough start. I mean,
Yeah.
as you know. I had a bit of a tear, 2nd-degree tear, I think they say. So I had to get a few stitches, which, that whole process it's all quite full on, like directly after the birth. I lost quite a bit of blood. So I was feeling quite weak straight after. Actually, straight after he was born, I stood up in the bath and felt like my legs were stuck. The midwife and Aiden had to basically lift me out of the bath.
How long after he was born did you try and get up?
I don't
Pretty
know.
quickly.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It was maybe like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something. And I just could not get it. And also because you've got to get the placenta and stuff out.
Yeah.
So I think once you give birth in water, you sort of need to get out and get the placenta out and check the baby and all of that sort of thing. So it was maybe like 5 minutes after, but I fully felt so stuck. Maybe it was because I was in a bath and sort of on my hands and knees and squatting and stuff in different positions. But I just felt so, I don't know, tender and weak and sore, and it's just quite incredible, that feeling as well. But yeah, lost a bit of blood. The placenta came out easily. That part of it was all good. Had some stitches. It was quite funny. Aiden went out to move the car at some point, just, not long after he was born, and get some food. Actually, it was a couple of hours after, and get us some food. I was like, get everything.
get me everything.
Get croissants, get cakes,
of course
get
you
coffees.
You sent me a picture of the croissant and little baby Ren, and I'm like, of course that would be your post-birth choice, not treat, choice. Yeah, you love a croissant, love a pastry.
Yeah, it was quite funny. I sent that photo around to a few people and they thought that the croissant was the placenta.
What? The placenta?
My auntie sent the photo on to her family and she wrote in it, like, just a side warning, I think the placenta's in the photo.
Oh my God.
And her kids wrote back to her like, Mum, that's a croissant.
That's so good. Okay, so
how funny is that?
Okay, so then you were home pretty quickly. Like you were home that night, right?
Yeah, this is part of the rules of the public system, that if everything goes well, the birth goes well, the mother and the child are both well and everything went smoothly, you go home after 6 hours after giving birth. So we were home in bed that night together. But I felt okay, so they checked. So I had some stitches. They check that you're all okay. They wait. They do blood tests. They check everything. They check over you and the baby multiple times during that time. When I was having the stitches, that's what I was going to say before. When Aiden came back with the bags of croissants and coffees, the doctor was in there stitching me up. So I had my legs up and having stitches, and he brought in coffees, and I was like, please give me a coffee. So I sat there drinking my latte while I was getting stitched up. We were home that night, which I don't know, it seems kind of crazy now, but we were well enough to go home. And it was, I must say, it was nice to be at home in our own bed, especially since the house was so clean and the sheets were fresh.
You didn't do all that work the night before for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Okay, and so now you're about 6 weeks in. How have you found the last 6 weeks or 5 weeks?
So, as I was saying earlier, Honey had gastro the day that I went into labour. So sure enough, day 2 of being home, I had gastro. So anyone that's given birth will know there's a lot of post-birth bleeding, tenderness, soreness, stitches. It's a lot. You're fragile and sore and tender the way it is. And I had gastro amongst that. So it was the most hellish night, that particular night,
And
actually.
post-birth contractions.
Oh my God, the contractions. Yes. I'm just going to say 3 things that I just didn't really know about the first time I gave birth and almost even forgot about this second time. 3 things that everyone needs to know about post-birth recovery. 1, you bleed for weeks. Everyone's different. I'm still bleeding mildly now.
Yeah.
And I'm almost 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That goes on and on and on. I remember the first time I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Secondly, the post-birth contractions of your uterus are so painful and intense. They were so much more intense this time around than they were with honey. And third of all, the feeding is relentless.
I think you forgot one other thing too. The night sweats.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I sweat to the point where I am wet through my pajamas, through the sheets every single night.
Oh.
It's the worst. It's so awful
And
to
that's
wake
still
up.
happening 6 weeks in.
It's still
for you,
happening.
Yeah.
I put a towel down on the bed every night before I go to bed. Like, it's full on.
Yeah. You should just sleep in your bathers. Might as well just sleep naked, babe.
I almost know I need to wear the clothes though so I can take it off because otherwise it just all goes through the sheets. Like I need something to sweat onto so it's not just all in the sheets. So yeah, there are a few things but I mean, don't get me wrong, like these are all part of the process and you'd absolutely take it in your stride. And if you have the right education and support, it's all just part of it. And it's an incredible experience. And even those things that are surprising, painful, whatever they are, it's still part of the incredible experience. So yeah, we just had a bit of a rough start with the gastro, and then of course with the how many bugs are going around at the moment, we ended up on day 7 with a nasty cold virus, which Ren ended up with as well. And that made the feeding quite difficult to get in a rhythm together because he had a blocked nose and was struggling to breastfeed. And then it sort of affected my milk production because he wasn't drinking enough. Then I ended up with mastitis the following week. And never had that the first time around, so I didn't know the signs, ended up on antibiotics.
Oh, it's so horrendous. It's awful. Mastitis. I had it with both my girls.
Yeah. It's now that I have experienced it, I feel for anyone that's had it, it's pretty rough and very painful. And it can keep coming back, which is shit. So we had a bit of a rough start, but we're getting there. And everything's settled in a bit more nicely now. I just was really worried for a couple of weeks there about my milk production, about the breastfeeding. It's like so important for me to breastfeed. It's just something that I really want to do. I had a great breastfeeding experience with honey and it's been so much harder and more difficult this time. So that was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, we're getting there. And I tell you what, every minute and every part of it is all worth it.
Totally. Couldn't agree with you more. And you're doing an amazing job. Look at you right now. You've got Ren right there. You're feeding him. You've just shared your, intimate birth story with us. So thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, thanks, darling.
And
thanks for your support.
you're like not even 6 weeks in. So
yeah, we've all got to be like, really respectful.
Be gentle on yourself.
Yeah,
be gentle.
Respect the process.
Absolutely. As you kind of, you use this word quite a bit. Just got to surrender. Got to surrender to the process.
You do, especially in this early postpartum period, because honestly, like, the cyclical rhythm every day of the feeding and the not getting great sleep and the, it's just feeding, nappies, sleep, feeding, nappies, sleep. It's like, truthfully, it's pretty monotonous. It's beautiful at the same time. It's incredibly
Beautiful mess.
Yeah, big, beautiful, chaotic mess. It is so precious and fleeting and beautiful, but like truthfully, it can be really monotonous. And I'm sure a lot of people can agree and relate to that. And we do talk about it as being beautiful a lot, but not the truths. So, I'm very happy to talk about what my truth is, and what my choices are. And not everyone will agree or be on the same page of how I've chosen or what I've done or how I've navigated it. But I think it's just really important for people to recognize, acknowledge, and respect how powerful childbirth is. And, that we all do have the opportunity to educate and empower ourselves to have the type of birth that we want. There's way too much birth trauma in the world. And I think that's just from a lack of education and empowerment. And if it's important to you to have a good, safe birth in the way that you want to, go and educate yourself, because everybody absolutely has the chance to, I believe. Things go wrong and things happen, and that's why it's amazing that we have the access to amazing healthcare and hospitals and doctors that we have to fix any issues and save lives. But it's also up to the individual. It's up to you.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to talk more
Here
about the first few weeks on a later episode, and we're going to talk a little bit about, mental health during pregnancy, postnatally, all of that. But right now, I think it's a good time to mention that we are getting back into sharing is caring today.
Yes.
It's been a hot minute, but we are pretty pumped as we're going to be doing a sharing is caring today, and we'll be chatting to Rebecca Edwards. Rebecca is a speaker, she's a writer, educator, and a qualified naturopath.
We really wanted to chat to her because how we've been talking about how everybody's been sick, how our kids are so sick in childcares, in schools. It's like a merry-go-round that we all can't get off of.
Young kids.
And Rebecca has more than 18 years of experience educating on all aspects of integrative health. So the perfect person that we can speak to about this sort of thing. We all want some tips and support in how to get through this winter of, nasty colds and bugs. We want to chat to Rebecca all about immune health, gut health, and how we can support ourselves and our kids through these colder winter months, full of all these horrific, nasty bugs that we all keep getting. So let's hear from her. Here she is. Becca, thank God you are here with us today. If anyone can educate us on supporting our immune and gut health, it's you. As the Director of Education at Activated Nutrients, we're just so thankful that they put us in touch with you and organise this chat so we can all learn a few things to better support ourselves and our kids and just get through this nasty, endless winter of all the bugs that are going around. Has everyone just been asking you for help and support with illnesses lately?
Absolutely. My phone is completely blowing up
Yeah.
with messages from my book club friends and my school mum friends and my childhood friends and my university friends. Everybody wants to know, why is my kid so sick this winter? And why is everybody I know unwell? And what can I do about it?
It's so hard.
We're
so
definitely in the same boat, aren't we, Soph? Having young kids, they're just constantly sick.
Yeah, it's rough.
So, Rebecca, what are some of the basics that we all need to know about our immune systems? Obviously, they're very complex, but give us an overview about how they work.
Well, that's a big question. It's really interesting whenever we talk about the immune system, because the immune system it's such an enigma. I mean, if you ask to point to your circulatory system, you can understand that that's the heart and the blood vessels. And if you were, what's your respiratory system? That's your lungs. But if you ask someone, where's your immune system? What's the answer?
Mm.
It's almost a mythical beast, but it's not. We're learning more about the immune system all the time, and I guess the important place to start is that the immune system is not just one thing. I mean, if you want to boil it down, the immune system is a complex messaging system where different chemicals called cytokines are released by the membranes of your white blood cells. And they're released in response to other messages floating around your body, essentially. So your immune system is basically a reaction to what's coming into your body from the external environment. I guess that's kind of a little way of distilling down what the immune system is.
It is hard to understand because we do talk about it like it's this simple sort of thing, or everyone says like, I need to strengthen my immune system, but no one really knows what it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because something that I hear a lot is people saying, "Oh, what can I do to exactly what you just said, Sophie? Strengthen my immune system or boost my immune system." And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that actually you don't want to strengthen your immune system. When your immune system is too strong, then that's when people can develop autoimmune diseases, which is when you've got immune overreactivity, when your immune system actually starts to attack part of your own body tissue.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like in psoriasis or type 1 diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So we don't want a strong immune system. We don't want a weak immune system. We want an optimally functioning, balanced immune system, and that's what we're all aiming for.
Okay. So a healthy diet's obviously important. We all know that for our health. But when it does come to our immune system health or our own immune system balance, what does a healthy diet look like?
Essentially, it looks like diversity. It looks like diversity, and it looks largely plant-based. I mean, you can find people to argue with you till the cows come home about, raw food vegan is the only way. No, carnivore diet is the only way. No, it's paleo. No, it's low carb. And, the truth is that there is no one optimal pure diet for every single human on the planet, but also dietary extremes have never been proven to correlate with long-term health benefits. So what really, if we go back to what's an optimal diet for immune modulation or healthy immune balance, then what the longitudinal observational research studies show us around the world is that a diet that is largely composed of plant material, especially fresh plant matter, does correlate most significantly with longer term health benefits. But if we look at why that is, a big part of that comes back to another topic that we all want to talk about all the time, that's on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment, which is the microbiome. Because your immune system is intricately related to your microbiome. Your microbiome is the complex catalog or collection of microbes which reside not just in the lining of your intestinal tract, but actually the lining of every body's surface, of every organ, of every cavity. Humans are just walking crowds of bacteria. And it can get a little bit creepy when you think about it like that, but we wouldn't exist if we weren't convenient microbial hosts. And it's
microbial hosts.
Absolutely. And it's a two-way relationship, because we exist so that microbes can live on us and in us, but in return microbes play out several really important roles in our immune health. Once again, if we look at what the relationship is between the microbiome and immune outcomes and health outcomes, we see overwhelmingly that people with the most diverse gut microbiomes are those who are most likely to have the greatest health outcomes. So that means people who have lots and lots of different types of microbial life living inside them. It gets all science fiction-y at this point. But where this kind of intersects with the diet is that, and this, I just love thinking about this, all plant foods contain lots and lots of different kinds of fibers. Some of them we can see, like, when you eat a banana and you can see the strings in the banana, but most fibers that are in plant foods are too small for us to see as humans, but they are definitely big enough for the bacteria in our gut to find and then to use as their fuel sources. The definition of fiber is a substance that we don't have the digestive capacity to break down, but the microbes that live inside us do, and they use those fibers to fuel their own metabolic processes. So the more different types of plant materials, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, anything that comes from a plant, the more different types you eat, the more different types of fiber you're consuming, the more different types of microbe you are supporting. And what that all adds up to is a more diverse microbiome, which we know relates to a more balanced and optimally functioning immune system. So that's the most long-winded way to answer your question. What is a healthy diet? Ultimately, it's a diet that supports your microbiome.
I think at the end of the day, it makes a lot of sense. There is so many diets out there that are very specific and obviously work for certain body types and certain immune systems and certain people. But yeah, the studies show that, diversity, whole foods, a range of different nutrients and foods are what work best.
And, it's the only diet that's been proven in the long term. I mean,
long term,
a lot of these kind of more faddish diets, I guess it feels like a little bit of an unfair term to use, but more extreme diets may, work in inverted commas in the short term, but have not been proven to do so in the long term. And the only one that has is the Mediterranean diet. And if you look at, the keystone kind of definitions of the Mediterranean diet, it's absolutely full of legumes and seasonal vegetables and nuts
good fats.
and seeds and and all plant and largely plant-based. The traditional Mediterranean diets had animal protein only a couple of times a week.
And a more relaxed lifestyle. Don't they all talk about how they, get together, nap in the afternoon, get together and have their afternoon catch up and drink and eat together and all this sort of stuff that has to absolutely play a role in their overall health. But I'm a real stickler in my household, Rebecca, to eat the skins of our kiwis and the strings on the bananas and all these things with all the extra fiber. And my partner laughs and he's like, the skins don't taste good, like cut them off. And I'm like, they're so healthy. There's no point in eating it without it.
Do you know, my daughter loves the skin of a mango and I'm like, go for it, eat it. You can have it. Amazing. Yes. She does. Talking about kids, if they are fussy or picky eaters, which I know from my own experience can be incredibly stressful and you worry a lot as a parent. Well, I do often, and they're not getting enough of the right nutrients from their diet. What can we do? Are things like probiotics going to help them?
Yeah, that's a huge question. Ultimately, what we want to do as parents is, and this is, oh my goodness, opening the biggest can of worms, is take the emotional pressure off kids and diet. And it's advice that I remember so clearly my mum giving me when my little boy was a toddler. And I remember I was at my mum's house and he, to be fair, he's actually always been a really good, in inverted commas again, eater.
Yeah.
But I think he hadn't eaten all day and I was thinking, oh my goodness, tonight's going to be terrible. And he then sat down and ate 3 boiled eggs for dinner. And I remember saying to him, oh, well done, darling. Mummy's so pleased with you. And my mum just pulled me out of the room quick as a flash. And she said, don't do that. Don't tie your emotions to what he's eating. That's dangerous.
I do this. I have to say I can do that occasionally. So I'm glad you
think
just
naturally
that. It makes sense, doesn't it, though?
It really does. And it was such a lightning bolt moment for me. It just made me think, wow, that is how you set up relationships between, unhealthy relationships with food and emotions. It starts right from that pleasing your mother by eating widely. So I guess my first piece of advice to parents would be take your foot off the emotional button when it comes to food. And the parent's job is to give your child a range of again, I don't really want to use the word healthy, diverse meals, foods to eat. And it's your child's job to eat what they feel like eating. And we don't threaten, we don't bribe, we don't, again, feed any of our own emotions into that relationship. So that's kind of point number one. If we then go start looking at, what's going on with the actual nutritional input, then it comes back to what we were talking about a moment ago. Diversity is key. And again, with fussy kids, often something that I find works really well is offering them a great big platter of all different things.
Yeah.
And again, taking the pressure off, putting it down near them while they're playing. Again, think about what is this where did we get this construct that children have to sit at the table and eat all of their food in, a 10 or 15 minute kind of sprint and then go back to playing and living their life? Toddlers' entire lives are journeys of discovery and, experimentation. So pop down a plate of 5 or 6 or 10 different cut up fruit and vegetables next to them while they're playing. And those little, those gorgeous chubby little hands will just reach out and take little bits, and they will be exploring their food as they're exploring, with their playtime. So that's something that works with a lot of people I speak to, is just taking the pressure off, providing lots of variety and letting them explore at their own pace. When it comes to what we can do when we've got kids who really aren't taking in as much variety or even as much substance as we would want, then, there's a couple of things you can look at doing. Really, you can look at, I'm never a fan of synthetic based nutritional supplements, but you can look for a whole food kind of blend of concentrated fruit and vegetable powders that you can mix into plant milk or breast milk or whatever you're feeding your kids. So that can be useful there. And to go back to your question, Kate, around probiotics, so that's a really big topic and something that we're hearing a lot about at the moment. How can probiotics help with the immune system? And again, that comes back to that relationship between the microbiome and immune regulation. With probiotics, it's really important to look at the research behind the individual bacterial strains that you're using. It's not the case that any probiotic will be beneficial for the immune system. You need to make sure that, as with pharmaceutical medicines, that there is good quality randomized double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trials done on the specific strains or the specific combination of probiotic that you're looking at giving. And there definitely are strains which have been shown in studies on real children to reduce their risk of contracting respiratory infections over winter.
Would you look at the specific strains for your child, or is it more of like a generic thing that, a certain strain is good for like the winter season to fight certain bugs, or for a certain age of child? Or how do you understand like what is the right strain for your child? I suppose you would speak to a doctor, but...
or somebody who knows probiotics well. So it might be your
like
doctor,
you.
it might be your like us.
Can we put you on speed dial?
We have your number, Rebecca.
You absolutely can, and you can join the chorus of other worried parents who are wondering what they can do. But your pharmacist, your naturopath, your nutritionist, your GP, they all may be able to help you if they've if they have an interest in probiotics and may have done some reading. But it kind of just reflects back on the idea of the importance of good quality research, that you really want to look at strains which have been put through clinical trials in groups of children just like yours. So that may be children in the preschool age category, it may be older children, it may be children who are more prone to respiratory infections, it may be children on antibiotics. So understanding which populations the bacterial strains have been trialed in and the outcomes that have been found will help guide you towards the strains and therefore the products that are going to be best suited for your needs.
That's so great to know, because I feel like a lot of people would just go and buy a probiotic that's age appropriate for their child and see it and go, I take probiotics, they're good for me, I'll buy this for my child and get them to have it. But it's obviously a lot more complex
it's always important to, I think, to understand what are the particular bacterial little friends that I'm inviting into my body in this probiotic supplement, and what do we know about those exact little bacteria? What have they been found to do? So my advice would be to speak to someone who has done extra training in probiotics and knows what they're talking about.
Rebecca, let's leave our audience with a few more of your amazing tips to support our health, but particularly as well, if you've got any more to support our kids' health, because I think that's what what Kate and I and most of our audience is concerned about at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this time of year, a lot of my friends have started asking about sun exposure as well. And vitamin D. And certainly, again, vitamin D is another one of the factors that comes into that complex interplay of the immune system. Vitamin D is a really interesting one, because if vitamin D was kind of discovered now, we wouldn't actually call it a vitamin. We would call it a prohormone. It has a lot more in common with the substances produced by our endocrine glands, hormones, than it does with vitamins, these substances that come exclusively from our diet. And that's because we actually produce our own vitamin D, whereas we don't make our own vitamin C or our own, vitamin B2 or anything like that. Vitamin D, we do produce ourselves, but we can only produce it under really specific circumstances. We produce vitamin D from cholesterol in our bloodstream. And where the cholesterol comes from, apologies for the coughing in the background, it's just a topical
it's quite fitting.
Exactly. It's all of my family have some kind of winter bug at the moment, so that's just ambient background sound for you.
Sorry,
vitamin D.
Mention cholesterol. If someone's cholesterol is high, does that mean they produce a lot of vitamin D, or does it not work?
Not necessarily, because again, the body has these regulatory systems where in a perfect world, your body will produce exactly as much vitamin D as it's needed. It won't produce too much.
Yep.
So having too much cholesterol won't equate to too high a level of vitamin D. But the other factor when it comes to vitamin D production is sunshine. I absolutely love this whole story, this whole biochemical process. Particular rays of ultraviolet light, UVB rays that come from the sun, have to shine essentially on your naked skin, and they then activate cholesterol to be converted into, or to produce, vitamin D. And then there's a lot more biochemical processes after that, where the initial substance then has to pass through the liver, where specific enzymes then act on it and convert it into active vitamin D. So lots of things have to line up. You have to have enough cholesterol. You have to have enough sun exposure. It has to be the right kind of sun exposure at the right kind of year. It has to be on skin that is not covered up. And then you've got that fine balance between having enough sun exposure for vitamin D creation versus skin damage as well.
Especially in Australia.
Exactly.
Everyone's
in Australia,
frightened of it.
that is a dance we're always dancing with. And, vitamin D deficiency is surprisingly high in Australia, and that may be due to us having, especially people around our age group, having grown up with the whole slip, slop, slap campaign, and
slap, slap,
absolutely, really seeing the sun as evil and dangerous. And it turns out the sun is absolutely necessary. Exactly. We need the sun to create this hormone-like substance, which we call a vitamin, even though it's actually probably not, which is responsible for helping to regulate immune activity as well. So careful sun exposure is something that's really important for immune regulation.
Can I ask you another quick question on vitamin D? I've been recommended I've got a 1-month-old baby who I'm breastfeeding at the moment, and I've been recommended to give them vitamin D drops because, well, from what I understand, it was one thing that that they can't get, or they can't, absorb from my breast milk. Is that right?
Well, it's not exactly. So vitamin D is a fat-soluble nutrient. It needs to be absorbed in the digestive tract with globules of fat. Breast milk is a largely fatty substance. So technically breast milk should be a good source of vitamin D. The issue with any kind of public health directive, like, all breastfed babies should be given vitamin D drops, that comes from really looking at a population level rather than an individual level, where we can't be sure that every breastfeeding mother has adequate levels of vitamin D for there to be optimal levels in the breast milk. It's easier and safer to give an overriding directive, if you like, to all breastfeeding mums that breastfed babies should receive extra vitamin D, and it's kind of a safety net in case the breastfeeding mums levels are not optimal. And again, to be fair, in this time of year, and after a pandemic of essentially being in our homes for the last 2 years, it's probably a fair assumption that a lot of breastfeeding mums are not going to have optimal vitamin D at the moment. So that idea of supplementing with extra for a newborn baby is going to have a lot of merit to it, for sure.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Any other great tips?
Oh, I would just reflect on what we said before. Diversity, variety, no pressure. And also, coming back again to that kind of no pressure, I'm a big fan of avoiding labeling foods as good or bad foods. We don't attach any value judgment to foods. It's, your kid, food is food. Food is wonderful. Food is nourishing and full of goodness and full of different nutrients we need. And, you can find nutrition in even the most kind of naughty foods, and that's not a word I would use, but foods that have been demonized. That's not what I would base my child's diet on. But I certainly don't make a big song and dance about some foods being good and some foods being bad, and some foods being banned, and anything like that. Food is just what we enjoy putting into our body, and it gives nourishment to us.
Yeah.
Love it.
So
Great
good.
advice.
And I think if you let them have that variety, even foods that, as you said, we won't label as naughty, but, maybe a bit more of a food that you wouldn't have all the time, then it doesn't become as exciting and as much of a novelty for them. So
Empowers them to make the right choices too.
I agree. And it's, over all the years that I've worked as a consulting naturopath, I would see so many parents who would come in and say, well, how do I make my child eat all these healthy foods? And I would just take, again, that compulsion out of it. You don't make your child do anything. But again, what the research shows us is that children who grow up with parents who eat what would be considered a healthy diet are most likely to eat a healthy diet as adults themselves.
Yeah.
So if you model and you provide the kind of diet that you want your child to grow up to eat, then that's likely going to be what they grow up to eat.
Very good. Thanks for the amazing advice, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's been such a joy.
Thank you so
having
much
you
for having me come in to chat with you two. I've been a listener for a long time, and it's lovely to be part of the process now.
Oh, thank you so much. We could
chat forever.
And we're going to put your number in our phones.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.